Do you find yourself swept away by the constant change and turmoil around you? Whether personal or professional, these challenges can keep us from living a life of peace and productivity. I'm Liz Hurl, a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist, and I want to show you data-driven strategies to help bring stability and peace to your life. Welcome to the Anchored in Chaos podcast. Hello. I always just say hello. I don't ever know how to start. Like, hey.
Hello, everyone.
Because they have the intro right before.
I know.
And then it's just like, hey, hello, everyone.
I know.
Yes.
It's fine. And by now, if people don't know us, I'm Dr. Tim Caldwell. This is Liz Hurl.
Same old. All right. I'm going to go we're diving right into it today. So we just got done finishing the episode.
We're going to do the other side of the coin.
We did the lacking roles for our females without males, or absent in a way of emotional feedback, because they could have been physically present, but maybe some attributes and traits weren't being exhibited to them. And then we're going to do the same thing. Everybody gets a turn. So today we're going to...
Everybody gets a turn.
Everyone gets thrown into the frying pan.
That's right.
So we're going to talk about... This is kind of interesting because males have currently been in the hot spot, if you will, around society right now regarding what and how they act and what their demands are and things like that.
Big time. It's the reactionary thing to this huge feminism push. We're now seeing this big... Men are beginning to defend themselves, and I don't think you understand what's going on our side. Right. And it's quite significant that is not being discussed. The mental health crisis there. So we're going to talk about men for a minute regarding what maybe they're looking for and what they missed out on or was absent in their childhood, in their upbringing, not just childhood, but as they develop these relationships. Yeah, not so much expectations, because that is so personal. That's a huge spectrum of things we can talk about. But really, kind of formatively, how was their paradigm, their view of men and men's responsibility to women, and where that came from or didn't come from. Right? We didn't get it. Yeah. Right. And we're going to start with the attachment theory, like we did prior. I was sharing with you just moments before that they have mirroring effects here, as if you're missing something, it leads us to the result of feeling anxious or avoidant in behaviors if you're missing certain attributes or nurturing aspects, especially from females. So I shared with... Emotionally, right? Yeah. There is this belief that when women become mothers, they suddenly have this innate turn on, like mother bear syndrome. That does not always happen. Right. Because of whatever they experienced in their upbringing. Maybe their mother didn't show them that, yeah. An absent mother, an avoidant mother, an anxious mother, whatever it may be, that natural, like when other women hear of other women saying, I don't know how you couldn't. I am 100% a mama bear, and all three of my children would tell you that. I'm not overprotective or anything, but... So you're not a helicopter mom, you're not a snowplow mom, right. You're none of those things, but what you're indicating to me is that there are people out there, and we're just gonna say women and men, that are missing some quality because they didn't get it. They didn't have a parent to teach them that. I didn't have a man to show me a man's view. I didn't have a woman to show me a woman's view. Right. And so that can lead to all of those behaviors within men that they then start filling in as life starts trends. They're faking it till they make it. Yeah, because that's helpful. So generally, that lack of nurturing and affection, is it really going to give that longing for security? Like, I miss something, but I don't know what it is. Especially if we see it in your peers, their homes, or at school. It's like, well, wow, my mom doesn't do that, And your mom's like really nice. Why is your mom so nice? Yeah. Or your mom's like smothering you, like it's like, what is happening? Or so you start collectively creating something around what is comparisons missing. You see these things pop up in your life at all times of your life. Grades. This is ongoing. Kindergarten, grade school, all these. Yeah, you see these things. It's ongoing, and you're unintentionally collecting a idea of the role of a female. Like, this is the attributes and traits I'd want her to have. Yeah. Like, I would have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Yeah. And, I'll take this and that. Yeah. You're kind of, Yeah. And again, women do this. I've seen a couple cute things where the mother confronts her young child. It's a sitcom. And she goes, I know you're seeing another mom. I can smell her cookies all over you. And the young kid, it's a great little episode. He goes, it was only one time. And she cuts the corners off my bread and all this stuff. And it's cute, right? It's
That
cute.
is adorable. That's really cute. Well, and that's actually really kind of healthy in some ways.
Yeah.
And could be unhealthy. But so the absence of maternal validation, I'm just going to ask you, I told you this earlier, I'm going to put you in the hot seat a little bit because I'm giving you my personal clinical perspective, but that needing the emotional validation of how I know I'm doing right, because it is completely different when your dad tells you you're doing something right than when your mom tells you you're doing something right.
Yeah.
And that's a more of an emotional piece.
Yeah.
Because generationally, I will say, dads are kind of a little bit more rigorous, like black and white, like that's what you're supposed to do. What are you doing? You know?
Yeah.
Whereas moms are a little bit softer and being like, honey, I know you really tried. And I could see that. But if you don't receive like that counterbalance, like, and it's maybe all rigid or all soft.
Yeah.
Like, how do you kind of work through that?
Well, there's a bunch of ways. And so I was raised on buffalo and buffalo and horse ranches. And pretty much all military family. And my dad was a man's man, right? And there was no messing around. But I will tell you just a quick little story about driving nails, right? Teaching a son how to drive a nail. And in the beginning, it can be just a scrap piece of wood, and you go get some nails, and you let them go at it, right? You let them go at it. Well, a mother watching them go, keep trying, honey, keep trying.
There you go.
And they'll bend 1,000 nails, and they'll just butcher things. But keep trying. The father would go, holy smokes, what? Are you my son? What's the problem here? And that interaction is so different.
Yeah, it is.
But it is imperative because the man will foster this almost competitive nature of, come on, son, I believe in you and I want you to do this well. And the mother is, oh, you can do it.
You're a
You can do it. And I'll kind of leave it there because as we get older, now our peers and the people who we may work for, if you can't, and again, this is a silly analogy, but driving nails. If you're driving nails and you can't nail something, we as men will hold you to task. We used to call them lightning. You can't hit the same spot twice. And we'll give him a little pink hammer, and you get to drive the nails with this hammer today. The idea behind that is we're going to hold you to pick up your game. And women and mothers in this, especially in this example, are there to just keep trying, right? That example is very caring and nurturing, but it's not exactly a drive.
Well, and that's okay because that's not her role. Now, what I would say...
It's really for you to don't give up.
Right. So
Yeah,
when
don't
we're
give up.
talking about the absence of that, there is a high likelihood that males will then tend to find and seek out females that is going to provide
That's
that,
right.
like those attaboys and those good... And that's where it's unfortunate, much like we were talking about in the previous episode, where people go into mommy issues. Like, well, I don't want another child. I don't want a man child, you know, versus like understanding, like, I need to know if I'm doing well for you. And I want to know if I'm doing well for you. And I don't want to be represented as an infant or something weak in that.
Right.
Men lacking that will really seek out that validation of mother-like roles in their female partners.
Yeah, and you know how that kind of where I was going with the story and how people have the opportunity to either they're really good at it or maybe they're not so good at it. They kind of drop their expectations until I find somebody who goes, well, my standard of what I do is good enough for you, right? And now I've kind of got a category. At least this person accepts me, and this person accepts me. And as we get older, we realize, okay, well, I can't change a tire. I don't know cars. I don't know this. Well, I'm probably not going to date a girl whose father was a mechanic because that's just not going to be acceptable in the whole mechanics of the family. That father won't approve of you. The daughter's probably going to have a lower respect for you because you can't. Men are trying to fit in, and they will, if they have that confidence that hopefully they develop from peers and their family and their fathers, they will continue to try to get better at it. Whereas men would just say, "Well, I'm not so good at it, and it's okay for her," and they'll settle at that. And there's a level of complacency at that. Not that we have to, and this is all kind of hard to put in one hard shell. But the smaller the circle we're trying to make with this point is, a father is more, I want you to get better, I'll show you how to get better, I will push you to get better. Whereas the mother would be, you're fine as you are, or, which isn't toxic, but it's certainly not a competitive realm, say, towards ancient man. You can't be a so-so with your bow and arrow. Right. You need to be excellent with your bow and arrow.
And so when we're talking about like seeking that validation in that female role part, then that leads us right into unintentional dependency of it, of I want to feel cared for. Yeah. And I depend on you stating, seeing, whatever it is for my self-validation, for my self-esteem. Because especially if you were deprived of that during adolescence, and then you find a woman that really does that, and you're like, man, this is amazing. This feels awesome. Oh, yeah. And I don't ever want to lose this. Right. So I'll do whatever it takes. Or in some ways that could be healthy and unhealthy, because it feels so good to feel cared for in a way that I have never been cared for before.
Do you think that leads to the male's tendency to peacock then after he does kind of a mediocre job, but she's really proud of me, and he gets all puffed up behind that? Am I missing the point in what you're saying there? Is do you think that men seek that out just so that they can elevate themselves in their own psyche? And
I'm sure, absolutely. Yeah. That definitely plays a role. It's kind of like when a woman in humor, oh, you're my big strong man that came over and did all these things. Right, and they're like, yeah, Yeah. And there's, even in that joking nature, there's a lot of stuff happening.
Oh, yeah, there is.
And it's saying, yeah, I appreciate that, because I don't want to be vulnerable and super soft.
That's right.
Like, I just see everything you do and you make me proud.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, what are you doing all that stuff? Well, calm down.
Like, shoveled snow.
Yeah, it's
Take
like,
it easy.
Yeah, easy. Yeah. Versus what that does too, because in those vulnerability pieces, so we're talking about that going into seeking nurturing, to be nurtured and cared for.
Well, in the growth period, the educational part, hopefully the male will develop the skill to recognize, am I being manipulated, or is this true praise?
Good luck.
Right? And
because if you haven't had a healthy example of that, of how do I differentiate between that?
Well, my point is that exists, yes, and
it does exist.
There are those who will they bend over backwards to try to please, and it's this really just this incredibly subtle manipulation. Gosh, that's heavy. I don't think I can lift it, kind of thing. And the male will go, I'll get it. And 500 pounds later, can you take it from here? I don't think I can. I think you're going to have to do it all. Okay. Well, this is a flaw, in my opinion, on the man's side, to not say, all right, I'll tell you what, you and I are going to do it together, because I need you to get stronger at this too. That's always my fix-it problem is, well, you know what, I'm not going to unload this whole thing by myself. We'll do it together. And then we both have skin in the game. We're both invested. If a man just will do this for a woman, I won't go there. The husband, if he's married, is probably trying to keep the peace, and he's going to do it because he's been doing it all along, which can be a trap. Or the husband will go, I'm going to do a little and I'll do a little bit later. And you're going to have to be patient with me because that's heavy and I'm tired. This explanation is vague again. But it's just an example of, I hope that a man in his educational experience, especially around women, will realize, is he being truly acknowledged for what he does and appreciated, or is it just a point of manipulation?
Yeah, and like I said, if you know how to differentiate between that, that's the only way you're going to be able to do that. Some people just wing it, and I don't know what I'm collecting in harm and feedback and things of that nature.
So that person would if he thought he was being manipulated, who could he go to ask, hey, probably their father or a father figure, and say...
Again, depending on what that relationship looks like.
Yeah, but in the absence of, he may ride that train until he just... Crashes. The wheels comes off.
Yeah, until he crashes. And so that dependency of the female approval piece that starts transpiring for an individual or male that has that lacking nurturing and caring aspect leads into inability of vulnerability. Like, I have never been taught to be able to be vulnerable with a female.
Sure.
So, like, being able to say, I know things are really hard, but when even a mom will, if a mother's reaction was to something that was really difficult, well, life's hard, so buck up, buttercup.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not saying completely wrong, but having that, I know like it's super sucky.
Yeah.
Like and I know you feel terrible about this. Just some sort of validation and being able to be like, Mom, I tried really hard and this didn't go well. It's like, I know you tried really hard. So he was vulnerable with the mother at one aspect, and she was able to validate that and not deflect or, unacknowledge his vulnerability.
Yeah.
And when she was able to do that, you're setting a great neurological feedback of like, wow, this feels this is what I think is healthy. This is what I believe to be true.
Yeah.
Therefore, I want to try and seek that out. But if I didn't have that interaction, and the biggest complaint I think a lot of females have are the lack of vulnerability men have, and being able to be
unemotionally available.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like and women are, as we shared, are higher emotional beings, and saying, I just want you to, but are we, and I don't want to get off where we're going here, but are we listening and things of that nature?
This is actually a tricky subject, because giving examples, maybe we should just boil this right back to the simple fact. Are there fathers present for a male's development, or the absence of a father in a male's development? And the mother's input and all that stuff.
For both.
And you are right, is that I'm afraid that men have been pigeonholed, especially in this last decade, that we're just cavemen, incapable of emotional response and emotional availability, and we're not. And we'll cover this a little bit further as we go down through our topic line. But I think the important takeaway from what we're discussing is more that the subject matter of, was it available for me to learn from in the beginning? And if it wasn't, this whole thing has to be developed. And it's not that men develop these emotional things slower. It's just that men seem to be willing to sacrifice more to please their female counterpart, especially if they thought, this is ancient. This goes back to having a mate, mating, finding a mate, all of this stuff.
On the head and
how much can I do to win your affections, right? And then
But the know-how. So that's where I'm going into the know-how of how to do that for a healthy, self-aware young man to be able to do that. Now, so if we're going into that, there's a piece around this. That's what I was saying, the overcompensation that goes into next.
Yeah.
This is a very dangerous thing, specifically for men, that is not really talked about a lot, because that overcompensation can sometimes lead to death.
Yes, well, that's the end. That's the end result. But mine is when you overcompensate, and there is initially some appreciation or a level of appreciation, but when appreciation fades away to expectation, that's where the male he literally, if he allows it, he's erased a line that she just stomps all over. And now you're carrying all the load.
That's when you're saying that there's, and again, I don't seem to sound like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but do I know how to differentiate between when it's overcompensation, when it's expectation, and that's a healed self? That's really good time to go to therapy and kind of learn about yourself. Which is the whole, idea around this, is understanding I need to look within as to why I engage, and the same thing that women ask themselves. I definitely know men, why do I continue to choose these types of intimate partners? It's like, how do I kind of seek the same people out over and over again? I've normalized this kind of interaction unintentionally, and I need to kind of maybe do a deep dive as to why that is. Again, not going off, but what happens to this piece where I am starved for nurturing, that I will do whatever it takes to get breadcrumbs, like just get a little bit of encouragement around, oh, I saw what you did there. That was great. Thanks. Well, hey, she saw that. That was wonderful. So how do I kind of, expand on that and get more feedback there? So I'm trying to think of an analogy. So I pick this up. So maybe if I pick up, this, so I shovel this piece of the a sidewalk, if I shoveled 10 driveways, would
Yeah.
that really make an impression?
Yeah, does that help?
You know,
Yeah.
and it's like, what does it do to versus the understanding that you're driving to be seen, and why are you driving to be seen? And if there's a little bit to unpack there, but
So that does touch a little bit on a couple reels that we reviewed in preparation for this. Is what happens when a person continues to do things and there's very little recognition for what they do. And that is, if a woman is with a man who's a go-getter, and this guy turns and burns from dawn till dusk, even beyond that, if she's a really needy, emotional person, she's probably got the wrong partner. Because if he has always been like that, and depending on where you meet him, or maybe he develops that as you go, that's something you'll learn how to, the female would probably learn how to either early on say, I don't want that, or say, okay, I like this and I can go with him. But if you're 30, 40 years into a marriage and this guy is never home, the woman is so tired of being alone, that's a big deal. And trying to ask the man to say, I want you to dial back, there's a possibility. But if it's really in his nature and he shows no signs of slowing down, that's going to be a tough decision, right? So in that matching model, if you're a go-getter man and you can't push a woman to do more for herself or want more for herself, you may have picked the wrong partner to do that with. It's just, remember the old opposites attract?
Uh-huh.
Well, they will attract for a while, but at some point you want to be able to have somebody who's way more similar to you, mm-hmm. so that you literally can relax. And we worked hard together, and all of these things were developed mutually. But if it's really one-sided, emotionally things can get way out of balance too.
Right. And which is exactly where we're going to go into next is emotional development gaps. So the emotional delay that takes place for men when they're not shown, emotional vulnerability and discussed and that's modeled in front of them. This is also where men get a lot of feedback around being childish, because that lack of maturity in being shown how to be transparent and talk about, what this feels like or what you think about or whatever isn't initiated or built in adolescence through young adulthood, that everyone's, you act like you're 12 years old. Well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And so then they start seeking out partners. And this is where we find younger men with older women, because they're kind of shaping them a little bit in their skill set around emotional understanding, guidance and support and feedback. And they're like, okay, so this is how this works.
So did I hear that right? It's younger men with older women?
Right.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I don't know what the difference is, and I don't even know where the timeline is, but let's say you're a 25-year-old man and you're with a 45-year-old woman. Mm-hmm. In that, there's probably sexual compatibility, or they wouldn't have been in a relationship at all. But at some point, those guys match on an energy level that is way more competitive, that shows the man, wow, she's a go-getter. Mm-hmm. I like that. But she also tells me what she wants, flat out. Mm-hmm. She just says, I like this. Yep. I want this. And the man can go, I can do that.
So currently, to speak to what you're talking to there, when we always talk a lot about the reels that we review and see online, because that's the day and age we're living in. But I have seen this, ironically, like quite a bit in feeds, and I'm just like, and I don't know. I bet my algorithm can never figure out what it is that I'm trying to do, because I look at so many different things. And so it's like, I don't know what you're
either a psychopath or a militant.
But it's of young men, I would say between the ages of 25 and 35, saying, you want to know why these young men are going after women over 40? These women know what they want.
Exactly.
They say that, they're not messing about. They're not, trying to run any game. They're not doing any of this. They're like very direct. And that is the difficulty in the direct approach, because you should know what I want. Like, you should know. God bless it, because I'll tell you, that mind reading thing has never in the history of ever worked for anyone. And when you're missing these components as a male, if you're missing areas of vulnerability and that nurturing, caring, And they're looking at me like I'm supposed to know what they're thinking. And
Yeah,
I have no
yeah.
idea. And then there's that insecurity that kind of flares up for them of laying like, all right, hold on, let me go through this whole list of things that it could possibly be.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the effort is not to let them down or not feel loved or validated or whatever it is in the moment, but it's versus saying, could you just let me know what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Well, you should know what I'm thinking. And it's like, actually, I always tell everyone, they said, I've had a couple of people say, as a therapist, what superpower would you want? Would you want the ability to read minds? Absolutely not. That is
Yeah.
horrific. I would never want that.
That's a one-way ticket to insanity.
I was like, no, thank you.
Yeah. The joke I've made to you. The joke I've made to you is, I listened to a comedian one time, a Christian comedian. He said when good Lord pulled that rib out, he removed the mind reading skills that men used to have, and the aspect that when two, let's say, young people are arguing, okay, well, we're going to break up. And they go, oh, and the guy goes, okay. And then she's all, what? I mean, it was her idea. And you said you wanted to break up. No, I didn't mean it. I wanted you to fight for me. And I'm like, okay, we don't understand the rule. The rules are different. The rules are different, especially engagement.
And this kind of goes into the makeup of how men's brains are really configured and structured, that it is really challenging to understand that they think completely different than a woman.
Right.
And that the expectations, it's really quite simple, and no offense intended. It's literally mission oriented. If you tell me 3 things, I'm on it. I know what I need to do, versus I have to guess. Are we doing this? That leads to so much discomfort.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to manage what it is.
Yeah.
Versus here's 3 things I need done.
Yeah.
Here's 3 things I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, perfect, thanks. But there's, I think, this romanticized idea from Hollywood and everything else on how those relationships are supposed to work, and they don't.
So as we talk about the hemispheres and their relationships and development, right-sided, left-sided, creativity versus purpose-driven or function, haven't done their research, but I can just tell you that most men are goal-oriented. They're more on function, problem-solving. Women have more of a creative and are highly emotionally attached to what they do and what they say and in their communications. We know that by how many words a woman may say typically versus a man in his practice or his daily life. However, the interesting thing between the man and the woman in problem solving is the woman is far more disposed to the fact that I can do this with the help of others. And if you'll help me, we'll get this. Whereas a man it's kind of this lone wolf hero thing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this all on. I'm going to do it all by myself. Now, this isn't hard and fast, but it's definitely something that people don't understand, especially even the problem solving. A spouse may turn, the wife may turn to the husband and say, how are we going to do this? He goes, well, I'm just going to work harder and I'm going to do all this. Whereas the wife's solution would be, well, why don't we get a loan, hire a contractor, do all these things? And some of those things just aren't suitable. Now, I start to tip my hand towards my own personal predilection towards how that works is I like to try to solve things on my own, because in all of the business I have, it's always been solo. Win or lose, it's just me. And part of it is I love the success that I did this alone. The other is I don't want to drag other people down with me. And that can be a real anchor in a relationship, in a marriage. And that is, I don't understand why he's so stubborn. Why don't we just get this done like this? And the man is really working hard to do it on his own, to a fault.
Right. And I would say the problematic areas of that is the lack of communication and understanding of that. And giving that information to your partner as to why those things are happening and transpiring. But I don't want to get off topic.
No, you're right.
So going back to where we're at here, I was talking about how men are kind of seen as being childish, or they're looking for that role replacement of that nurturing mother. And that sometimes becomes identified for females when they're in a friendship or a relationship, regardless, either one. And they're like, I don't really I feel like I do a lot of attaboys, or I'm very encouraging. And that's not the role I want to be in. Because see, if she's wanting that secure masculine role of authority and leadership and security and protection, and she feels like I'm shouldering a little bit more, like there's an imbalance there. And it's not an intentional action from a male, but that is due to the lack of what they didn't receive. Those are things that they unintentionally fall into.
Yeah, I understand.
The biggest fear, I would say, point about this is the fear of emotional neglect, when we feel like we're not being recognized. I'll give this. I think I've said this before on the show, but I'll tell it again. I had a time where my son was playing basketball, and he was probably 5th grade or something like that. And he took pretty hard header, and the coach was over by him, and I'm sitting there just like burning up but I'm like, no,
to go to him.
I wanted to go to him.
Yeah.
And the instant I heard Mom, I was on the floor like anyone way was going to be against the wall, because I was like, there's nothing going to stop me in this. And I go over and I'm like, okay, buddy, like, what's going on? And he was bleeding. He was more angry about being hurt than he was about the emotional piece. But so I take him over to the bathroom, and he's getting cleaned up. And there was a gentleman there that was a dentist, and he wanted to make sure his teeth was okay, which was really wonderful. And he went into the boys' bathroom, and he's like, Mom, don't come in here. I'm like, okay. So I like back off. I'm like, all right, know your place. And I'm like, are you okay? And even in all of that, there was a soft interaction with him of, I care about you and I'm concerned about you. And then he came in and kind of, bandaged himself up, and he's like, all right, I'm going back out there. I'm like, that's right. And so I kind of was doing, multiple things there, but I wanted him to know that this did matter, that you were injured.
Yes.
And then we kind of...
which is timeless. As long as your son's alive, he will always be your son. And if he called you for help, you would...
Yeah. Oh, high water. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And all my children know that.
Yes. Now, the tragedy is a son who never had a father.
Well, or a mother, or the mother role in this capacity of saying... Mothers have a responsibility of showing a different type of affection and protection to their children as fathers do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're missing both, right? Like I didn't have protection from a mother or a father. And so I had to really, assimilate something all on my own. And when you're speaking to that, like, how do I manage that? Well, these are the unintentional, maladaptive patterns that we get into to kind of regulate ourselves, to feel love.
Yeah, athletics.
And just some compassion around it.
Athletics is its own kind of animal, in that there are rules. And that having coached plenty in my lifetime, when you watch little guys, you can see a helicopter parent. You can see a helicopter father. He's right there on the sideline with me, and why isn't my son out there? Why isn't, well, that's different. But especially like in an injury, my sons have played sports. My son Alexander was an amazing athlete. He got hurt. The speech to him would be, if I were there on the floor, is, are you okay? Yeah. Can you play? I think so. Your team needs you. And I'd cut him free. It's your choice now. But I'm always something great. You're a part of something greater. Go apply yourself. Can you or can't you? If you can't, you can't. The coach will see you can't. But the rules are quite simply, I can't go out and play for my son. That's the helicopter or snowplow parent. I'm going to go out there and I'll show you what my son can do vicariously. Well, that's not going to happen. And vice versa. The son can't do it. Some parents are terrible athletes, and they want all this for their kids because he's living out my dream. But that's a whole nother rap. But the notion that the mama bear thing comes to, you're going to add him a sense of compassion, and your son literally just said, all right, I can do this. He bandaged himself up. If you had an overly emotional mother, that mother may say, what is that coach doing? He's driving you into the ground. He's making excuses, and everybody's to blame about your little darling got hurt. And men have a hard time actually literally digesting that. It seems like so much damage when everybody out here is the same risk. We're all taking the same risk. That's what's interesting, is sports in itself have their own rules, and you literally get to witness the best of players and the worst of players, the best of decisions and the worst of plans. You get to see all these things come together, a winner and a loser. How does the winner handle the loser? How does the loser handle the winner? And for a long, long time, sports were just male. And then female sports came in. And the rules still apply, but as it comes from those parents that are sitting in the stands, they're trying to guide their children, and this is another realm of that experience in life.
Right. Well, and the example I was giving there was really back to the understanding of showing what ideally hopeful emotional security is versus emotional insecurity. Like, he could be upset, he could be wounded, and I could acknowledge all of that. And by no means, I just want to go on record, I am no perfect parent or anything of that nature. Everyone has their flaws, but just wanting to give an example of the absence of that, which is leading to that emotional neglect of feeling like I don't know how. No one's ever encouraged me when I've been wounded in any capacity, emotional or physical. And that carries into adult relationships where men become highly sensitive to emotional withdrawal and may crave constant reassurance from their partners. It's that goes into that dependency piece. Like, I need to know that you value me. I need to know that you see me as a man. This is how I am a man. And you need to shoulder all of that responsibility. It's like, hold on. And that's where a female's like, wait a minute, how is that all my responsibility? Or depending on her level of wounds and trauma, she might absorb that and try and play that role a little bit. Yeah. But it's all very unproductive and not suitable for either partner. Yeah. Because at some point it's going to be destructive.
The nice takeaway I have from the story that you just told and what I might relate on perspective is simply that in your son's need, he could call on his mother and you were there and I feel better and I go back. The opposite may be true of this. An absentee father's in your life, but he doesn't come to your sporting events. Now, these are some things that played on my heart when I was growing up, or when I was raising my sons, is that my sons all played sports, and I can't make it to all their events. And I miss some really big things. And there's always this part of me that I'm going to have this hallmark moment where the son looks into the stand and I'm not there and he's depressed by that. But the message to them has to be off the court, and that is, I can't be there for everything. But when I'm there, I'm there. And I'll celebrate all your wins, and I'll support you in all your losses. But I need you to perform for you. You can't depend on me being in the stands all the time. Be you. And you're being a part of something bigger than you. This goes into the whole military mentality and this network that...
And you're speaking more to that male role.
Absolutely, I am. That's the only position in this 50-50 arrangement that I'm qualified to speak to. Yeah.
Absolutely. But going back again, that dependency that starts when I need that emotional feedback, and I feel like that is unfortunately something that I see happen a lot, is the weaponization of emotional withdrawal when, and this happens on both sides of the field, if you will, that if I feel like, if from a male or female's perspective, this can go either way. If there's something that was not met, I will withdraw any form of affection or emotional feedback to you because you've let me down. And then you weaponize that, and that becomes where someone becomes clingy and overly, I'm striving for those breadcrumbs again because I just need to know, I think that you're amazing. I need to know, I hear, I feel safe with you, or I feel secure with you, or you're whatever it is. And so then there becomes this desperation for a male to really extend themselves. And then they're like, oh my God, why are you blowing up my phone all the time? It's like, I love you, I love you, I love you. And it's all like love bombing is a lot what they're talking about today. But we also have to talk about, in all these terminologies we're using, where that comes from, why love bombing happens, and all the deficiencies that individuals have, both male and female. That's why I get into this role, is because I'm starving for something, or I'm missing something, whatever it is. And then I start getting overwhelmingly like I said, what are you doing today? How's it going? There's not much. It's kind of funny because there's not a lot that always happens in a day. And sometimes there's like not a lot to talk about. I mean, it's kind of like a day to day, but it's just like, well, imagine that person that's like, hey, well, same day, different course kind of thing. And it's like, well, but you don't tell me what's going on, and you're not telling me how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And you're not telling me, what are you keeping from me? And it's like, I literally have nothing. Again, this goes both sides of the court.
Yeah.
As, I feel like you're withdrawing.
Yeah.
And now, it definitely is unintentional weaponization, because I'm feeling insecure because of my lacking.
Yeah.
Not because I can identify it, by the way, because this is unhealed pieces. But I'm just kind of sharing. That's to our listeners and viewers. That's for that
somewhat of what I hear in your explanation is, I have to do this all day. I don't want to come home and have to explain my day to you. Mm-hmm. I literally have left it at the office or on the construction site or in the workshop where it is. I really don't want to go over this with you. And that can seem like a withdrawal. But when things come down, when the emotional fatigue wears out and you get yourself all leveled out and you're better rested, let me tell you about my day yesterday. Mm-hmm. That seems like a much better time. It's always a better time to approach something when your emotions are they're tuned way down and you're thinking more logically.
If you have the ability to communicate.
If you have the ability,
because there's nothing wrong with saying, listen, and it's, you and I both have shared, we have talkers in our family, specifically my children. I can come home no matter what. As you know, I have late evenings, and I'll come home and my girls are ready to kind of rattle off the stories of their lives. And I'm just like, okay. Yeah. So, but I have the awareness to like buckle down and be like, I need to feed my girls because I've been gone and those pieces. And like, it's what's going on in their lives and their struggles. And, if you can just, again, take a few minutes to kind of hear that out and then button that up. There are a lot of times that I'm like, when they're just like, Mom, are you even listening? And I'm like, I am so sorry, sweetheart, but it is important what you have to say. Yeah. Regardless if it's about, the next math class that you can't stand. But I just need a few minutes to kind of give me, give Mom a few minutes. Like I communicate, I'm not perfect, I'm tired, things like that. But again, if you're not shown this, you're not experiencing this, you don't know how to maneuver it. Yeah. So you go with what you know, and sometimes what you know isn't helpful.
So we're speaking now from parent to child. Mm-hmm. I too have one. My youngest son, it's cute because I literally have a sign for him, and it is this, and he'll go, okay, and he'll get to the point, right? Mm-hmm. That's lovingly and jokingly tell him, okay, guys, get to the point, right?
Gonna nip it up.
But the point is that my sons understand that you give me the factual highlights, and then you can fill in all the stuff when I have questions and all that stuff. If you want to expand, go ahead. But when we have time, at supper or whatever, I'm kind of in a rush here, let's do this. Not that I use being in a rush as an example, but it's just teaching him that not everybody needs to hear a movie credit to credit, and that's how my son Alexander is. But now let's use this as an example to a man to a woman. A man may not share much of his day at all, and he just comes in and his head shoved into his shoulders, and he's just worn out, and he's grumpy, and he's kicking his boots off, and I'm kind of making a bad model or even an example for men, but I come from a working family where we all worked very hard, and that didn't come from, not all of that came from higher education. It came from just literally getting your hands dirty. Well, the spouses at some point know how to read the room, and my father, who he was like in his day when I was a kid, he was just a volcano. He just needed something to explode on all the time. And he was a loving father and a loving husband. But when he got like that, we spoke when we were spoken to. And if he needed something, he asked us.
But that was your family dynamic.
That's my family dynamic. But spouse to spouse, I never saw him yell at my mother. And she could see, how was your day? The question never existed. But if that question was, how was your day? She could read the room. And what she'd do is she'd see to his needs, and she'd see to his needs as a loving wife, not overdoing. I made your favorite meal. She just did what she did because that's what she knew he needed just to relax. Right. And again,
I like that you're speaking to this because you're talking about your experience and seeing a female role in your upbringing.
That's exactly right.
And so that again, correlated and you started translating that information into self. Okay, so this interaction is how this works. And then no doubt that played a major role as you transpired into adulthood. And going in looking at that nurturing of your core desire to have that nurturing aspect, men often get, I would say misunderstood, I don't know, or unrecognized, that men actually want to feel really safe in the relationship with their partner. They do. And there's a lot of safety that's always discussed about female to male. I want to feel like if I'm walking down the street, well, sometimes in this day and age, there's a lot of misunderstanding around that. But if I'm walking and something looks, you can take the role and the lead and move me over to the side or do whatever. I will
take one step back.
Right. Yeah. I'll, not to go off of segue into where we're not at, is what I'm trying to say, that my daughter has mentioned that when she always thinks it's cute and funny, but I have to help her recognize what that means. She's like, when my boyfriend, we're walking down the road and he always walks towards where the traffic is coming. He always moves me over on the inside. Right. And she's like, oh, I think, and I'm like, no, that's actually what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's what she's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, that is.
He's supposed to move you on. That's what because he's like, it's fine. And she's just walking down the street chatting away. And he's like,
all this conversation is ancient. It is ancient.
It is, but it's
opening the door for a woman is just like helping her up on her mount. Having a woman step to the side is a man in armor walking through a bunch of men in armor, and he's making sure he's defending his most valuable asset in the best way he can. He's got his head on a swivel. This is ancient stuff. But the point that I really want to take away from this, and I've told you this before, and that there it comes in a man's life. It's not that complicated in the roles that we play as we interact, is that there used to be the hunter-gatherers and the women took care of the camp. Now, that got all twisted into, I'm doing his laundry, and it got, okay, I get it. We all have our jobs, but most importantly, when things get bad, are you going to pick up a spear? Are you going to go fight the bear?
Well, and I'll tell you, in today's day and age, yeah, I will.
Yeah, I know. But my point is when times allow it, and a man comes home from hard work or from frustrating work, it's not hard work, it's just mentally laborious because it's so much bureaucracy or backstabbing or whatever the thing is, that's more exhausting than physical work. There's nothing more pleasurable to a man to know that in my home, my camp, I can put down my shield and put down my sword and close my eyes and not feel like I'm going to be attacked. That's really important.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Well, and that's the area of safety that an individual might be seeking, because I know that I can release here. I can be at rest here. I'm off the battlefield, if you will. And when that's something that you're constantly striving for in your counterpart, in this case a female, that I'm seeking that safety within you, how do I construct or educate or communicate that if I don't maybe even know how to do that? And that becomes like, the obsession of I'm striving for safety in this relationship. And I've got to kind of figure out how that looks. And if I'm not taught the communication skills or the language on how to engage with that, then I'm already at a disadvantage right there.
You are right. And the thing I would like women to understand about, in the example that I just gave, is when we talk about a man in his man cave, it's his safe spot. And it could be a chair, it can be a room, it could be his garage, it could be whatever. That's their sanctuary, and in that it's just, let this be mine. And I know that's an odd thing it's an odd thing to try to propose, that in our relationship we would split everything 50-50, but this will always be yours. Well, it's just like your closet. It's just like a woman's closet, a woman's shoes, let's say men and women wear the same size shoe, and a guy starts wearing his women's shoes to work because my boots got a hole in them. Well, those are my shoes. This ownership of what we own and what we think is is ours and they're valuable to us. It's just like a man in his space. And that quiet time is a time to reflect and decompress and whatever he needs to do. And the nice thing is when a female can understand that men need that more than women. Women would rather call up their girlfriend, let me tell you about my day. But as where a man would just shut up.
Well, and I think this goes right into the next part of the difficulty in handling stress independently. If you're unaware how to manage your own emotions or your own feedback to self, I guess, in that due to the lack of that modeling in front of you or seeing maybe an unhealthy model of how you handle stress. Like, for instance, if someone comes in from their day and it's like, okay, yeah, well, you were at work all day. Well, I did this all day. And so there's no like understanding or consideration around that. And it becomes I always tell people about a tally system, like, okay, well, tit for tat versus like just saying we can both recognize we're both really tired from our day.
Right.
And like, what do we need to do? Well, men typically have a hard time handling that stress because then they're putting on a different hat that has a different workload. And it's like, I don't want another workload. I'm ready to actually release myself from a workload.
Right,
so I don't know. They're highly more irritable. They're more reactive, verbally reactive. And then it's like, why are you yelling at me? Oh my God, why are you being so mean? And it's just like, I don't know what it is that you want. And sometimes it becomes very unhealthy and very volatile. So
what do you want for supper? I don't know. What do you want? Whatever you want. No. Could you just make it a decision?
Right.
And the guy goes, I'll eat whatever you want me to eat. Well, okay, how about this? And then you go, yeah, that sounds good. No, I don't want that. We don't need that confusion. If you want to feed me rocks, feed me rocks.
That's where, like, men get vilified as being these.
Hey, he doesn't care.
Well, no, yes, he doesn't care, but like this animalistic, when you walk in the door, you're ready to bite my head off.
Yeah.
Versus like what may have gone on in their day and what they're ready. I don't know how to handle any more stress. And if I come in, no one enjoys going in from one dynamic to another.
Yeah.
That especially emotional, like it's different, like your work relationships versus like, well, my wife's really upset with me, or my girlfriend's upset with me, or my partner's upset with you. And now I have to go in and I have to manage that. And it's like, and at some point you're not managing your stuff very well, specifically relating to our topic today, because of the lack of education on how to do so with that emotional awareness. This kind of goes into, we're seeking those maternal dynamics. I kind of touched on that, where you're unintentionally looking for that balance of the mother figure to encourage you, to make you feel like you're important, and what happens there. So then the perception that women are caregivers and like, you're here to take care of me and this is what you're supposed to do, versus like a partner, you're supposed to be side by side with your partner. And caregiving is part of that, but misunderstanding around what that actually looks like when you haven't had the representation in a healthy format. It leads to really high expectations of, and this is a longer conversation because generationally, when we think about what we were taught when, wagon wheels days, when they came home from the fields and she had supper on the table for him and things of that nature, it's that was a shared understanding of the dynamic that wasn't power and control, which is being misconstrued today, but of when I walk in, it's like, my woman's going to have my food ready and all this nonsense. And again, that's gotten twisted and really misrepresented as there was an understanding of what was going on in the home when he came home and things of that nature. But when you are looking for, because of the lack of security within self for male specifically, like, I want to be babied. I want to be, I talked to you about this in the setup of the discussion around man colds, like how they're like super big babies.
Like a woman can have her arm cut off and she's still out there doing everything. And a guy. Yeah.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Cold.
Yeah, there is a reason for that, though. Like, I know specifically that it's super not favorable for women to be like, oh my God, he's not feeling well. I cannot even. Oh my goodness. Like, get over it. Which there's some facts there. However, there's also some considerations too. Yeah. Who doesn't want to feel cared for sometimes?
Right.
it's, again, I'm talking about the, excessive neediness of that versus like a healthy balance of saying, you know what, I get you're not feeling well. Like, let me have some consideration, but.
I'm going to boil that down into something even more fundamentally basic. And that is when a man doesn't feel good, he feels weak. And a weak man is a dangerous man. And when he feels so fragile, he's going to shrink back. If a woman's there to take care of him, he'll take every advantage of it. And I'm not going to take the man's side because it's no fun being sick. But when I don't feel sick, I just shut it all down. I just take care of myself and do my own thing. But I've seen women, they're in really bad shape, and they go to work over and over. They take care of the kids. They take care of all this. That's a different kind of strength, and it's one a man needs to recognize. And it's hopefully it's something that a woman recognizes, is that 5 days a week that guy's in this mill, busting his butt to put food on our table. I can do my share if he's willing to do that. Yeah, and that's the simple message to that. Yeah, that's the simple message to that.
And as we're wrapping up here, the goal of just kind of reviewing this and giving consideration to males and men around that, again, this is a delicacy, to be delicate to yourself around this, self-aware, like maybe, this isn't, there's a reason why we respond the way we do. There's a reason why we expect what we expect.
That's exactly right.
And if we could maybe say, maybe this is I maybe was missing this, and I really seek this out in my partner because I never had this, and I unintentionally have them shoulder the responsibility of that. And then actually I'm seeing why we're having so much conflict around that now, and that I'm not a baby or I'm not whatever, that I might have missed some pieces. And the education of that within any dynamic or working relationship, an intimate relationship, whatever it may be, of awareness for yourself. So I guess my parting ideas or thoughts are this, that it's understandable why when men do not have that role model of a nurturing and caring female role, whatever it may be, mother or grandmother or whatever, they tend to unintentionally manifest those desires and needs for validation and affection, emotional support, and emotional articulation from females at a higher capacity that I'm going to make you responsible for, because this is an inadequacy me, and as you shared, men do not like being inadequate. Yeah. So there's a high amount of, pressure put on your partner unintentionally. And just, take a moment to kind of think about that and say, again, this isn't like assassinating yourself or going after your own person, but giving yourself some awareness around, I, of course, love The Office, and there's a great line in there, why are you the way you are? It's a whole other scene, but there's a reason why we are the way we are. And if we could look at it through a compassionate lens versus a judgmental one, that would be my encouragement.
Yeah, I think it's Tony Robbins who once quoted that the level of the quality of your life is the level of your communication, right? The better you can communicate what goes on in your life, what your concerns or your wants or your needs, to your partner, you're probably going to have a better understanding between both, and doing it frequently, and not letting things accumulate until they become these monstrous things, these dragons we just cannot defeat, because that's where these small things fester into these giant things, and then we find ourselves with this huge divorce rate that we have. Rushing into an arrangement with somebody who you think you're madly in love with and it's your first love, I always give caution to people that they weigh the responsibility of what you have to do in life versus what they have to do and what you have to do together. Now, for a young mind, that's almost incomprehensible because they have no education or anything to compare it to. They may see their parents struggle, but we young people don't understand what it takes for their parents to get them to where they are, especially if they've moved up economically. Let's say you're first, second, or third generation Italian, Chinese. They come to this country with very little, and they all have to work. But in all likelihood, it was the man breaking his back while the woman took on the same types of chores. If you study socioeconomic development between men and women, in 100 years, remarkably, most all of the same jobs are occupied by women as they do change much. It's because we are different animals. And if we expect to get along, we're going to have to communicate our special needs.
But the only way we can communicate our special needs if we know what they are.
That's exactly right. And
So
that's up to you to know that too.
that's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah.
that's my encouragement. Review yourself.
Yeah.
And do so delicately and kindly.
Agreed. Great topic, Liz. We could talk more and more about this.
Yeah,
but
well, and
great
we'll always
topic.
expand on it. As always, we just ask that you go in and look us up on the old socials and like us, comment, reply,
yeah,
do whatever
share,
it is.
please. Please share.
Do the thing you do. And just be kind to yourself. Always be kind to yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Mine is, I always try to make people understand that you're God's creation. You're unique in every way, shape, and form. Take care of yourself. And I mean that because somebody else probably needs you, whether you know it or not. They need you, so do the very best you can. And we'll keep this up as long as we can afford to.
For everyone.
Thanks, Liz. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
This show is part of the ICT Podcast Network. For more information, visit ictpod.net.